right, so welcome everybody to another night of feedback. Today I am going to go over Chris's image first. And let's look at where he was previously. And I know after talking we went over how to soften shadows. What we found out is Chris's shot, his model was pretty big. The unit size was pretty large. So when we put the radius of the light to a value of like 5, he was still getting those really hard shadows. So we went crazy and we put it to like a radius of 1,000, and then he was finally able to get like softer shadows. But looking at this, I would say we might have gone a bit too far. I think you can bring back the radius size. I'm looking at the shadow, and it's really soft. And I think based off of what we're seeing on her chin here, her shadow from her face, you can bring the radius back maybe by half. The other thing that I'm seeing too is exposure wise, it is much brighter than what we're looking here at the character. We're getting I'm looking at like the dark hat, and the dark hat is really light. So, and his ear is really it feels overexposed. So I would try to get back to these values a bit, and I think you were pretty close where you were here. These values felt really nice. I think now that you have the size of the light getting closer, I would try to get back to these values in terms of your exposure. The other thing is, it feels like you might have, if you're using a spotlight, you might not have any penumbra on your cone angle, so you're just getting this really sharp edge here. And I think that's great that we're getting like this dark area and this light area, but when I'm looking at this image, it's much more of a softer grad. So you can probably have the light, like the penumbra, start here and then fade down to like this value down below. And that'll give you that nice gradient going from dark to light, and us being able to read the face a lot more. The other thing too is you may want to take down your fill just a little bit. I feel like you have room for your core. I think we still want to have that core shadow happening. And right now it's starting to get flat. So I think we just want a little bit more shaping. And to that point, I think like the rim light might want to have it a little bit more of a rim. So let me see if I can draw this out really quick. So taking this value a little bit brighter. So that rim, we're probably looking at like, opacity high. Okay, so you're probably wanting to hit that rim just around the edges right here. So we're feeling just that shaping, and then you can darken this down. Like you don't need this to be in light. It's really just a kick to feel like there's another light source off screen. The same here. You can keep that light, and then you can bring. So let's just look at the exposures. And exposures can be a little bit different because we're in our RGB profile space, color space, and we're not in a high dynamic linear color space, so it may feel clampy. But as I'm bringing the exposure down, you can already see how far you were already with the light on your character. So I think you have some room there. And then you can certainly bring down these values, so you're just getting bring down some of this. So you're just getting some of that, just the rims, just on the ear. You can bring that down here as well. So you're just getting, you want almost like just that type of rim on the hat. Just simplifying some of those things. And then the last thing that you can do is with the, I think your light, your backlight can actually go a little bit, your volume light can go a little bit, if I'm looking at the color, it can probably go a little bit more yellow than red. And you can probably fade that out. So grad it so it's brighter over here. And then, sorry, let me get this. So then it starts to get more, like this grad coming from left-hand side. And now you can start seeing that like the character separating a little bit more from that background. The screen right background can certainly go into, you can have it either go dark, or you can do what you were doing previously, and you have the cool background back there. So those are some things to look at and try to continue shaping your character to get it closer to this image. So moving on to Ingrid. So I think the first thing, oh wait, I actually have this saved. So let's go here. Let's look at your video.
Get out where I can see you.
Sir, there's no need for violence. It's... I'm afraid I've run into tough times.
All right, so let's first hear from you, and then I'll bring up your reference images, just about like what's going on in the story. What would you like to portray with the lighting, the mood, the tone? So yeah, I will lend.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been working with this animator. The story is basically there's this guy who recently got laid off, and he's homeless now, and he's like lurking for food in the alleyway. And then the restaurant owner finds him there, and he's like kind of threatening at first. And so I think the guy with the broom is like a little more of an antagonist here, and the guy in the dumpster is, I guess, protagonist. So I kind of want to portray like a little more harsher, I guess, vibes from the restaurant owner, and then the guy in the dumpster is more kind of desperate, like looking for empathy, kind of like a little softer there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you could even turn the tables too, where it like you almost sympathize with this character initially, and make this scene very kind of like you want to have a reveal of this character, right? Like of those that gear change of emotion.
Yeah, I see that too.
So it's like we start with this situation, and then we get to this moment where your character, we really have that switch where we think of him as the antagonist first, and then we actually realize that he's not. What I would say too is, okay, let's go over your reference images. So talk a little bit of why you chose these references and how you think that the images, how you want to portray it in your shot.
Sure. So these images, actually, the animator sent them to me saying that he wanted like this kind of mood, and I was trying to go for it. I think his main thing was like he wants to see the animation really clearly, but also he wants it at night. So I've been trying to like, I guess, make it a little brighter, but also I don't think I'm reaching that point of like exposure with like the lighting yet. I'm not sure like if I want it like to look softer or not, because I think I see more like harsh edges in my lighting so far.
Yeah, it's definitely a much like more contrasty shot
Yeah.
compared to something like this. Um, and I think you have the right idea of like trying to get this light to 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 point us into this direction, and getting like the rim on this character here um, is definitely that's definitely the point where you want to like look at. I feel like you might want to shape the character a little more, hit it like with like
Mm.
an additional light. Like this first rim is fine, but I think you might want to have another kind of like broader rim, just so we can read this character a little bit more.
Okay.
Um, I think going over like the surfacing a bit, I feel like you can probably get like what's kind of cool about this image is when I'm looking at the ground, it almost feels like there might be like some wetness to it. Like it's not as like asphalty. It's more
Mm.
like like almost concrete. And like where like there's concrete's gonna have some breakup to it, like some kind of like rough spots, and then some is gonna be like a little bit shiny. And especially being next to a dumpster, you probably would have some kind of liquids and stuff spilling out, um, and that might like those differences in textures and roughness is really gonna allow us to kind of like focus more like up here, because right now like there's such a high frequency to the texture on the ground that my eyes want to actually kind of go here a bit. Um, and when I look at this image, it's like it has less high frequency. There's breakup. There's interesting breakup to it, but it's not as contrasty. Um, so I
Say
went
that's like the bump to it you're saying is like different.
Yeah, well, it's not just like so. There's the bump, which has like this high frequency, which the bump is probably pretty too high, but it's
Right.
also the roughness. So like, let me see if I can
Oh, okay.
find the specular roughness. So like reflected reflections, and um, let's see if I can take this one. Okay. Let's see if we can find some images. So it's kind of, you see how like there's a specularity to it. Um,
Yeah.
like if we kind of like look at the ground here, there's roughness here, and then there's reflectivity to here. Like there's this just kind of like these breakups that we have on the ground, which you would kind of expect from behind like an alley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you don't see as much of that like um, diffuse noise pattern that's here. It's a little bit, there's a little bit more breakup to it. Um, yeah, so like you kind of get an idea here as well. You see how there's like reflective bits, and then there's like rough bits kind of happening, and that's gonna create some interest, especially where I think what would be really nice is if like this light, if you had a much more defined throw pattern to like where this light is coming from. So like this doorway can actually create like that like shadow shape, or that light shape that's really defining and pointing into this direction. And then you can add like some of those softer spills on the outside. But like having a really nice like bolder statement might like will allow us to like look in this direction a lot more.
Okay.
Um, I think like the same thing with like the uh, with your concrete, or sorry, your brick pattern. Um, let me see if I can open this a little wider. So you might want to actually add in like play around with like displacement maps, um, and take down your bump map. so that, because right now what it feels like is it feels like it's getting flat, but there's like the texture coming from the light, where what I would kind of expect more is being able to see some of those, even when it's in the shadow side, I would still expect to see some kind of plane changes happening. And then the kind of the same thing, like just looking at like ways to add some specularity to like the door and the doorknob. Like right now this feels very diffused, like it's almost like plastic a bit. So like bringing in some of those like more metallic textures would create a difference as well. And then I think with your character, his subsurface scatter might be probably a little bit too strong. He's getting a little bit gummy, so you can see like it feel like this light that's hitting him from behind. You can see like the subsurface scatter go through really strongly. And I think you can probably bring that down a bit. And then in the background, I think you have room to start bringing in some of those cool fills. So similar to like what's in here. Now, it doesn't have to be this bright, but I think it's getting a little bit inky back here where we're just getting blacks. And I think you have room to bring in some fill light back there.
Are you seeing like more of like those photometric lights I have on the walls, or like actual just like a area light kind of thing?
I think it's just like maybe an area light.
Okay.
Like unless like you want to, like I think with the, let me see. Oops, sorry about that. Let me bring that back up. Photoshop here. So in here, like these lights here are placed specifically to allow your eye to kind of travel down to here. When we look at your shot, let me bring that up. Our focus is going to be like right here. We want to kind of move here. So first the thing is getting the key direction correct. So let's get a good key direction of that light, really pointing us over here. And then just adding a little bit of cool fill in here. And then we can start talking about how we can shape. Maybe you have some of this light coming off from off screen, and then you can actually start taking these specular hits here down a bit, and you can do like a dark over light read. So there's ways that we can probably start to push our eye in this direction. So I would start with kind of getting like the texture, like the surfacing in a good place, and then work on getting your key direction and adding a little bit of fill, similar to like what your reference showed. And then we can start like talking about going a little bit deeper with the read. The other thing too is what you can do is I would just stick to one frame for now until you get kind of like a good place with your staging, and then you can start to go into the steps. And I think too, like let's try to lock in this shot first, and then we can start to work on this shot, because once you lock in those two angles, this shot will come. This is like considered a same as, so it's similar framing as this. We're just tighter. So I would start. Let's work on this a couple iterations, and then we can jump into this direction.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. But this,
Thanks.
I think the references are great. I think like you have the right idea of having this light like spill from the interior out here and kind of hitting him in this direction, hitting this character with the rim. I think it's just now it's like, let's make it a little bit kind of like a bit bolder statement. All right, so great first pass. I'm going to move on to Darwin next.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, so fantastic iteration. I'm trying to get a little bit more light on myself. Okay, so awesome iteration. I see that you're adding some of that like halation in here. That's feeling great. I see that you're bringing in that bounce, and then you got rid of that shadow. That's feeling really nice. You see how it's starting to simplify the read a bit compared to your last image. You see how I just simplified it just a little bit more? And then the shaping was helping a lot, like with like showing that like grad going from that bounce all the way up. So I think you've made some really big nice improvements. I did a quick mock-up to how to push it a little bit further. And
Okay.
what I was thinking, and you can tell me if this is too far, but what I was thinking, because this is later in the day, right? So
Yeah.
much more saturated, like kind of warm tones, kind of coming in the spills, and that's you can start doing that with like that bounce light that you have, and just make it much more saturated. Right now, your bounce light is still pretty like neutral, so you can start adding in more saturation to that, and you can even add in like that saturation underneath like your character too. Like see how it's like getting a little bit warmer underneath, like underneath this box, underneath the chin, all the way up these values up here. The other thing I did was saturate that halation, going from neutral to like more reds tones. Again, kind of pushing that this is like later in the day. And then the other thing too is like in those dark tones up above, I was adding more blue saturation. So now you're getting like this cool blues up at the top, and then it gets to more neutral kind of warm tones, and then it gets to the more saturated warm tones. So you get like kind of that, you get more of that grad going all the way up.
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, actually I was a little bit shy of changing the color from the bounce too much from the
Yeah.
light source. So I thought like I don't know if I should go super red or just keep it on the same range kind of from the light source. So I was like, maybe I'll do this iteration and then see what Shane says. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Go for it. I think you have room, and I think it'll add like, it's like thinking of the grads. How can we not only do value, so like what you'd have in here is a nice value grad. What I'm doing next is now I'm adding a hue grad. So we're going warm to cool. So it just kind of emphasizes more of that, like we're in later parts of the day, almost sunsetty, like almost close to sunset. So like the sun's coming down, it's filtering through the atmosphere and getting more of those red tones. But then your cool tones, we're cheating that to be a little bit more saturated. I didn't at first. I was thinking that you could just do it through. Let's see here. You can just do it through just saturating the ground level, and then it can go more new. Like it still feels cool above, but I just pushed it a little bit further, and what it does, it helps separate this character a little bit more too.
Yeah. And do you oh, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Uh So should I get a light for those shadows, or maybe just do it in comp like the saturation? Because I know, for example, if I could go more kind of reddish on the bounce and on the halation, I think I could do it on comp because I have only one pass for the bounce light, so I could just grade it and put it a little bit more red. Or what do you think?
I think you can. I think you can easily get this cool fill, because I think you already have a fill light, right?
Yeah, on top. Yes.
I think you can get it in comp. And do you have do you have position data?
I do. I do.
So what you can do is you can take like the Y position, which is your green channel, and uh you can take your white and black points and then make like a grad, like a gradient mask, and then like
Mhm.
only grad up until here, and just change that your fill color in just this section with the Y.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I was thinking, well, if I change all the fill, because if it affects like all the characters
Yeah.
now
Yep.
every.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can just do that. Like just try to isolate just this top section with the position grad.
Okay. Sounds good. And
Uh,
then changing the halation, right?
Changing the halation color, changing
Yes.
the you can use the bounce. I even added a little bit of warm bounce like on this chair here. Like if like I'm I'm looking it's just to kind of like emphasize that like there is warmth coming from below. So it's like adding a little bit of bounce, warm bounce here, and then like you can keep it cooler up above. So it's like again, it's not just like looking at like how do I add shaping to the background, but how do I add it in like the foreground too? So it's like you can see like here's before and now here's after. Just adding that little bit of like warm bounce on the chair feels like this light is pushing into your shot. Um, the other thing too is like if you can try, um, I would see if you can try to get rid of this shadow as well.
I did. I did, and I actually was going to talk to you about it because the sun is which is it's the one creating the shadow, but then if I unlinked it, it looks a little bit off, and it looks like the shadow from the back of the arm. It looks like weird.
So this shadow here on his back of his arm and this shadow is the same light.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, that's good to know. So what you could do is you might want to just add some fill. Again, this is like detail type stuff, but what I'm trying to do is like similar to this side is simplify this read that you have.
Okay.
Um, so play around with it. Like it's not if you can't get it, it's totally fine, and we can totally uh, this keep it in there, and it's not gonna be it's not gonna hurt the image at all. I'm just looking at like little tweaks that can help simplify the reads of stuff. Um, and then the other thing you can do is like you can probably get like remove this like in comp like remove this little patch of light here. Again, simplifying and maybe not even remove it completely, but just bringing down like getting rid of that contrast, that huge contrast ratio.
Okay.
And then the last thing is with your character is you can probably bring the fill down a little bit and add like more of that warm saturation into it, and then bring your wrap around a little bit more, just and warmer. So that way you can I'm just looking at trying to shape your character just a little bit more.
Okay, because at first I did I created the shadow like on half of his face because the attention was going all the way to the character on the foreground at first. So that's why I don't know what do you think? Like if I show him with a little more of a light a wrap on his face, wouldn't the attention be on the foreground character instead of the background one?
Uh, I think so. I think it's just adding more shaping to his face. So we
Okay.
still want
Okay.
him to look appealing, but we don't want it to be brighter, uh,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So it's not like we're not getting. If you look at what I'm doing, all I'm doing is I'm just going and creating a core. So you can see I'm creating this core shadow in the shape of his face, and then just and it's just moving the light wrap around. So it's just looking at how you can shape the character a little bit better. See, like your character here, he has that core, that distinct core. If we look here, like and squint our eyes, this character starts to flatten out a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think like you can start doing some of the like, again, these are all like like we're getting in like the tweaking section, right? Like you have the staging and now it's just tweak a little bit more, tweak a little bit more, and getting the read. Like, because this character now actually, if you look at it, when we start adding more of that warmth and the cool, you're starting to frame this character more.
Mm-hmm.
And now our eyes are starting to push here more. So that, yeah, those are just a couple of little things that I was thinking that you can do. And yeah, like bring in some of those warm bounces underneath your character will also help integrate that this warm bounce is happening.
Okay. All right. I'll try to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And this is, like I said, like just adding those bounces, we're starting to read this so much better. And it's just now it's like, okay, now let's work on the hues. You know, like it's working on those like hue shifts. And I think like, yeah, it's getting really, really close.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, on to Andre.
Hey.
I think great job pushing this back. The structure of everything is getting much better. I was actually taking a look at your references again, and I'm wondering if we might have gone too warm. And you let me know, like, do you, like in your reference images, you have more neutral light, and we have a lot more kind of like warmer, getting into like around 5 o'clock temperature. Which one do you like better, like in terms of lighting scenarios?
Yeah, the references were more for the shape of the light in the background, way more than color or anything else. It was just because of the light streak coming in that I liked.
Got it. Okay, perfect. That's all. That's all I needed, because yeah, I think that the color is great. I would say the one thing that I think you can still do is, like, compared to your reference, going back to reference, is getting that distinct shape back in. I think you can go up and really start building that distinct, like a harder quality of light. So looking at this, like, and we're changing the shape. We definitely were changing the shape of it, but I think we lost like the edge of it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like, still kind of like where it was here. I think that like that's fine. I think we just need to get, like, if you look at like the if you look at the draw over that I had, it's really getting this distinct shape in there. And that's going to help like really drive that this light is coming from a window. The other thing, and this is great that you're getting this nice shape, like almost the bounce light coming off. But I think you need to have, like, it's starting to feel a bit soft and trying to figure out where the light is coming from. So I think you need that harder quality of light and that harder shape for it to really feel like it's coming from outside.
Okay.
The other thing is, I think you can probably take like some of these hot spots back a bit. I think my eye is starting to go there a little more than on your characters. If we look at like the characters, like right here, like it's working here because she's framing inside. But like in this shot, like right here, like this, it doesn't feel like, it's starting to feel almost clamped. Like this, this starts to feel like it's a value of this, but these values feel like they're almost clamping a bit in terms of exposure. So I think you can bring these back just a bit.
Okay.
And then I think, I think you were right in terms of the light on here. I think you can probably just have this completely in light.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna concede, and I think my intuition was completely wrong about having this like half in shadow. I think you were right that this needs to read better and be fully in light.
Okay.
And then with your character, I think the fill side, you should bring back, like right now it's starting to feel gray in the fills. Like it's too cool. I think you should go more local color. Like get more of those like warm tones back into the fill side.
Okay.
So that way it starts feeling like skin tones again. And out back here, this is great that you push that back. I feel like now you can take down a lot of that contrast. So you see how it's seeing like really black? I think you can like take those contrasts down a bit. So like if we look at like this image, like the blacks aren't like as dark as our foreground blacks. It's like you want to try to get less contrast back there so we're not looking at it as much. And I think you can probably go, right now there's a big hue contrast. I think you can go more analogous. So like you can still have it in like the warmer tones, but it's shifted in hue a bit. So it's like it's not as warm as this. So you can maybe like push it just a little bit. So I'm like looking at this color. So this is a little bit cooler in front, just slightly. It's more neutral. And then this goes a little bit warmer behind. I think like you can just bring like, bring the contrast back a little bit in terms of hue as well.
Okay.
And then if you want to try out some of that iris shaping that we had I had gone over last night, you can try and test that out too and see if that helps with the irises as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just need to figure out how to get that matte.
Yeah.
To render.
Have you reached out to the chat by any chance to see if anybody from there knows?
I don't think I'm probably one of the only ones that will use RenderMan here, so I don't think so.
Okay, so let me do a little bit more digging on that, and see if I can figure out a demo to get the IMATs.
I can just apply 2 different materials and use a crypto matte.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, so your sclera, is it like a separate geometry? Your cornea.
No.
Or is it just?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yes, it is.
So what you can do in another pass as well, if you're not able to figure out the like the other mats, the puzzle mats, because I'm not sure if like crypto matte, I don't think crypto mats are able to go through refractions, because I think it's a primary ray. But what I think you can do in another pass is make everything black, and then assign like a red emissive to the iris, and then like a blue emissive to the pupil, and then keep the sclera still like refractive, and then turn off all your lights. So it's like a cheat. Like we're cheating.
Yeah.
Cheating some mats.
Yeah.
So you can try testing that out too. That might actually be good for like refractive mats.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you're getting pretty close. I think it's just getting those like bolder statements in there with the light shape, getting a little bit more warmer tones into your character's skin. Like the shaping, I think the shaping looks really nice on the character. Once you like warm that fill side, that's gonna feel. I think you're gonna start feeling like it's skin again, and it's gonna be much more appealing to look at. And then doing a little bit of work on the background and then the eyes. And I think and this front desk section, I think you're in great shape.
Okay.
All right, nice work.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, moving on to Baseball Gal. Okay, so let's look at. So I think you've made like. First of all, just the mesh light that you have in there is already feeling really great in terms of what it's doing to the environment. If you look at like just the shaping with one light and the shaping that it's happening on this character here, and we look at Ryan Gosling, it's already getting pretty close to what is happening, which is awesome. Like just looking at the way it's decaying, it's feeling a lot more like this. And now I think what you can do is first, I think mesh light wise, we'll go over after the creative notes, potentially technically how to not have this be so flat. But I think what you can do with the mesh light is you can turn off the light link or the shadow linking on the shoes, so that way it feels like the light is still going underneath the shoes, like the shoes like almost its own light source still. So we don't want to have any shadows coming from the shoes. That's going to help with it still feeling like this big light source as well, because lights will not cast a shadow. Looking at your shaping of your character, I think that like this color right here, first of all, I think this is looking great in terms of the shaping. I think this color might be going a little bit too cyan compared to the reference. The reference still feels pretty blue, so I think you can probably bring that back to more of like the darker blue tones, less greens in it. I think this shaping is looking pretty good. You might want to add in maybe like a bounce light from below just to fill in some of these dark blacks. I think the blacks are what starts to give it away that it's not a light source anymore. So I think you can start to add in like maybe one more fill light from underneath to kind of fill in some of these dark areas. And that fill light might be like more of the magentas. The other thing that I'm looking at is the color, and I think you can add more blue into your mesh light. Because I'm looking at like the color here, and as I squint, it looks a little bit more like you're going the magentas, and I think you can push more blue into your magentas, and that'll get you kind of closer to this color as well. And next, I think you can start to, now that you have like this mesh light within your scene, I think you can start shaping the background again. So like getting into like this grad between like this cooler almost violet periwinkle kind of color to like this darker, you have your darker saturated blues here, and then it grads to like the darker violets, not fully black. if you look at it, it's not completely black, but it's definitely darker than down below. Because what you're going to want is to have this, get this simple read of, so you're going to want to have him bright. So I'm looking at the face. The face is going to be the brightest. So it's still going to be a little bit brighter down below. And then it starts to darken as you go up. And then after you get the staging where you want it to be, then we can start talking about how do we get like this character to like, how can we get it to feel like this character is a little bit transparent, and then on top of that adding some glows to it so it feels like it's this big light source. So that's like the creative side of it. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned the blue color on the top left. I was running into some like problems when I made the color darker blue. It would like go completely white. Would that just have to be like maybe altering the pink and then like going from there? Because I think the pink is over the whole object, and then the blue light is just over that side of it.
I think it's taking away green.
Taking away green.
Yeah, because like the green is what's going to make it more white. So when you add red, blue, and green together, that's going to be a neutral white source. So when I'm looking at this color, I'm seeing cyan, and cyan is an add of blue and green together. So I think if you take away the green, I would just remove the green completely. And that should help alleviate it feeling like it's more neutral or desaturated. Okay. Like these blues right here feel really great. Like this color, like these blues. Yeah, I think that's something that you can test out as well.
Okay, cool.
But how do you feel like working with less lights? How does that feel so far?
I think it definitely feels like my environment in Maya is a little less cluttered. So it's a lot easier to keep organized in how I was working with it.
And this is kind of like the way you're lighting right now with just like one mesh light in an environment and this character is kind of what like a Roger Deakins would do in this shot.
Okay.
Like he probably had this very big like light source here, and that's probably what he used. He's very simple in his type of lighting, and he just tries to get everything through these like less lights. He looks at like, okay, what is this light specifically gonna do? Like when he was doing I think it was like 1912. Let me see if I can find that for a second. Or 1918. That one.
When I'm lighting the environment, would I also use the same method to light link it just to the environment and not on the characters?
For this mesh light?
For the environment, like when I go to do that part.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, only have it on these characters. So like what you're like, think of it as like, this is like a hologram, right? So it's lit in a completely different environment and then projected. Like the hologram is projecting what she looks like in a completely different environment. So that's the way I would kind of treat this. And I would render this character separate. So that way when you start getting into trying to like get these transparencies, we're affecting the alpha of your character so you can see the background. So, but if they're combined, it's just going to be black. So we want to separate this character out from the background.
Okay.
Okay, so let me see. Oh, you see, this is exactly what I was looking for. Like Roger Deakins is creating this really big light source, like with like he can't do it. He doesn't. We just are not technically capable of having just one ginormous light other than like our sun. But what he did is to simulate that is he put a bunch of panels together to simulate this really big light source. And that's what gives us like that really like simple read in this area. And I have a very good feeling that he did a very similar like process for this. Yeah, so that light source actually created this image because they comped this building afterwards. Okay, so that's the creative side to this. For everyone else, this was the last last critique. If you feel free to log off. I'm just now gonna go over some more like technical stuff. So feel free to jump off if if you would like. So if it's okay, I would love to do a screen share with you looking at your scene. Is that possible?
Yeah.
And let me turn off my screen share.